Hey everyone, I hope you had a wonderful Halloween, that you were safe but did something really fun because you guys deserve it. And I hope that you're all doing well right now, or as well as we can be amidst this really stressful week. I know that a lot of our thoughts are probably on what's going on in the world around us, and that's completely understandable. With that being said, I did want to make a quick video, one, because I feel like I haven't made one in forever, and two, just as a way for me to introduce the comparative analysis, our final unit, and also to introduce next week, since it will be a little bit longer as far as your assignments go than the weeks before. I'll explain that all in a minute. But I'm going to try and make it short and sweet. As always, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And just know that I am thinking of you guys and I'm wishing you the best. And I'm super proud of you guys for doing so well in this class amidst these unprecedented and really difficult times. So you guys are doing great. I'm going to get rid of my face and then go into full screen mode. Okay, so this was in my slides that I posted earlier this week, but just thought I would paste them again. These are the instructions for your comparative analysis essay. The reason that I'm posting them this early is just for you guys to start thinking about how you should approach reading the readings for this unit, knowing that this is the essay that you will be writing. What you're going to be doing first, though, before you completely submit your essay, is turning in this comparative analysis and synthesis worksheet that is due Wednesday, November 18th by 11:59 p.m. This is what it looks like. This is an example. We aren't watching Bicycle Thieves and Reading in the Midst of Plenty because I replaced those texts to fit the theme of race in America. But these are available in the Carolina Reader if you want to read them to understand these examples better. But even having not read or watched them, if you haven't, this still should give you a good idea about how to fill this chart out. What you're going to do when you turn this in is basically just erase all of this, and you are going to complete your own chart right here. So you'll put your name, the two texts, like whether it's a film or an image or a text from the Carolina Reader or what. Fill this out, and then you're going to do your MLA citation for both of them. As I explained in the description of the worksheet, the same way that I'm allowing you guys to use at least one text that I am not assigning you if you want to, I am also going to allow you to use one or two max outside sources for your comparative analysis if you'd like to. The only catch is that if you do want to include an outside source, or one source that is not one that I assigned to you, you need to include it in your comparative analysis synthesis worksheet that's due November 18th so that I can look it over and approve it. But if you want to go ahead and pick one out sooner and run it by me, that's totally fine. Just shoot it to me in email or set up some office hours via Zoom where we can discuss it. So just to recap, the comparative analysis, simply put, asks you to take two different things and compare and contrast them, but it asks you to do this so that you can explain what is significant, what you learn, what is meaningful, what is important about your comparison. So your argument should stem from the comparison of the text. You are reading two texts in conversation with each other, and your argument centers around what you're saying is important about their similarities or their differences or both. So for instance, you can pause this video whenever. I'm not going to verbatim read everything, but this was basically some important quotes that I pulled from your two readings from this week. So Take Me As I Am, Whoever I Am by Terry Shaney, and To Keep It Holy by Tara Westover. So what you might want to do is underline or make annotations for these, kind of like what I did here, identifying what felt important from the text, and then kind of doing a first step to comparative analysis where you list what they have in common with each other, what's similar, and list what they have that are different from each other. Then you kind of want to take a step back and ask yourself what is significant about these similarities and or differences. So for instance, both of these readings are memoirs. They're both reckoning with their identity. They both feel othered by those around them and displaced in their social spaces. And they both come oh, that's a spelling error, sorry. They both write about their unique personal experiences. So the differences would be that Shaney writes about her mental illness with bipolar disorder, while Westover writes about attending university after being homeschooled by her conservative Mormon parents. Shaney seems to understand her mental illness, but young Westover seems confused and overwhelmed and disoriented about what she's feeling and experiencing. So then going further, now that you have your list, and it can certainly be more comprehensive than the one I just showed you, that's just a start, you want to finish making your list and then ask yourself what the significance of your comparison is. So you can focus on exclusively their similarities, exclusively their differences, or talk about them both. But either way, you should acknowledge that no two texts are the exact same. So when you're approaching trying to come up with what the significance of your comparison is, aka your argument, if you are crafting an argument based off an analysis on how both texts or authors center around the theme of X, be sure to explain the significance of what they're saying about X and why it's important that they're discussing it similarly. Kind of on the same note, but different, if your argument is an analysis of how both texts or authors treat and or discuss the theme of X differently, then be sure to explain why it's important that they're discussing the same theme differently and how/if it affects the theme or your reading of the texts. So the former example of how you're explaining how two texts are discussing the same theme similarly might center around the significance of that theme. And then you might be explaining how the different ways that these two authors are talking about the same thing in a similar way helps illuminate the importance of this issue or whatever you're saying about that issue. But a little differently, if you decide to take the opposite route of talking about how they are discussing this theme differently, then you still want to discuss why is it important that these two different texts, so for instance, this film and then this linguistic text, are both talking about race or poverty, but that they're doing it in a different way. Why does it matter that they're doing it in a different way? Is one more effective than the other? Are they both effective, but for different reasons? You want to really think about what the reason behind your explanation of their comparison is. So for instance, we're going to constantly circle back to this question of so what, that is essentially asking you what the significance of your argument is. So for example, and this will make sense in a minute when I talk about next week, say you wanted to write your comparative analysis on the film Get Out, and then you chose a recent image or images from the Black Lives Matter protests that have been happening and were happening, especially this summer. What you might want to think about is how might you put these two, this one film and then this image, into conversation with each other? How does one affect your view or your reading of the other? And how does it shape your reading of the texts? So how is Get Out discussing, for instance, the issue of racism in America? And how is this image doing it? So you can choose to focus on the similarities or the differences, or talk about the importance of both equally. So I wanted to go ahead and introduce next week because you have to watch a film along with read some short readings. So the work for this class will be a little bit more time consuming next week. So I wanted to go ahead and give you a heads up. Your readings are Sweat, Homage to My Hips, and the film in the article in Get Out, The Eyes Have It. All of those, the articles especially, are posted in Blackboard. The other two are from your Carolina Reader. I've also posted the film in Blackboard. I'll show you in just a second. And because I am asking you guys to do a little bit more next week, I've extended your deadline for your discussion post to Thursday by 11:59 p.m. and your replies are still due by Friday. So I highly recommend, one, reading the discussion questions in advance, And then 2, planning ahead to make time to watch the film or go ahead and watch it this weekend if you have time. But just to preface, next week's theme around our readings in this film are racism in America, which I feel like is especially fitting, seeing as what's going on right now this week. So I will go ahead and show you. This is what Blackboard looks like for Unit 3, Week 13. I fixed your due date here, so this discussion post is due Thursday. Under Read and Review, I'll post these by Tuesday night. This is the film. It's a direct link to Get Out, which is available for free for you using Swank, which is a U of South Carolina database. If for some reason this link doesn't work, you can follow these steps in order to access it on your own. This is the very brief alternate ending to Get Out, which you should watch after you watch the film. And then this is an article from The Atlantic that talks about or analyzes the work that different forms of sight and seeing within the film do to amplify its racial horror. It's an incredible article that helps you understand the film better, but is also a really good example of how to narrow in on one specific part of a text or film and then explain its significance to themes both within the text and outside of it. One thing I did want to note, though, and I put it in red here to make sure that you guys see it, is that if you haven't seen this film before, it is rated R because of its language and its violence. And towards the end of the novel, towards the end of the film, there's a particularly violent and gory scene. It's at the 1 hour and 27 minute to 1 hour and 32 minute mark. If you're uncomfortable with gore, you can skip it. That's why I put this timestamp here. But I do want to stress that the reason that I'm assigning this film, regardless of it being rated R, is that it is a film about racism and white supremacy, systemic and societal in America. So violence is intentionally integrated into the film and is a significant part of its themes and its discussion of race. So after you watch the film, what you're going to do is go into Write and Respond. Your PSA blog this week, you can choose to either write it on Sweat or Homage to My Hips. And then when you do your discussion forum on Get Out, you are going to choose only one of these 3 discussion questions from your Carolina reader. They are a little lengthy, so just make sure that you're reading them closely and carefully and then answering them just the same. And as usual, if you guys have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out and ask and let me know.